Chapter 78. All Li Qingshan could do was follow him. If he refused right now, he would only be asking to be humiliated. Before absolute power, no one could say no. However, he rapidly considered everything he had seen. What was a second-layer Qi practitioner all about? Wasn't it innate? The person he was about to see was also a major figure of the Hawkwolf Guard. He had no idea why he wanted to see him. Was it also for the spiritual ginseng? His mind was filled with questions that he could not answer. However, the strength of the imperial court completely exceeded his imagination. Instead of saying the imperial court used wealth and glory to recruit these powerful people to serve them, it was more accurate to say that the powerful had established the imperial court and ruled over the world. With great power came great responsibility. That was just a fantasy in American movies. In reality, with great power came great authority. As he thought, the three of them made their way out of the city. Hua Sengzan walked at the front. He basically floated forward, moving faster and faster, leaving no traces on the snow. Feng Zhang circulated all of his true qi and did his best to keep up. Although he was nowhere near as graceful as Hua Sengzan, he could still tell that it originated from the same type of footwork. On the other hand, Li Qingshan was not as graceful. With every leap and leap, he would cover several dozen steps with each step. He was like a charging beast, mobilizing every single bone and muscle in his body. He possessed a primitive and crude air of heroism. He actually managed to keep up. Among the three of them, Hua Sengzan and Feng Zhang circulated their qi, while Li Qingshan used his strength, which immediately made the difference. Feng Zhang thought, if this kid flees as fast as he can, I really might not be able to keep up. He doesn't seem as simple as a regular first-rate master. Once I see Commander Wang, I'll report him and cripple his martial arts. Hua Sengzan was much more discerning. He also secretly assessed Li Qingshan. First-layer Qi practitioner, and his true Qi is still very weak. It should be the effects of the spiritual ginseng. He's practiced some kind of body-tempering method too. His vitality is very powerful. Feng Zhang plucked up his courage and asked, Commander Hua, why did you and Commander Wang come here? What's the matter? He wanted the two commanders to move out. Hua Sengzan glanced at the two of them with a smile and said, Boss Gu is here. I don't know why exactly. Li Qingshan saw Feng Zhang staring blankly for a long time before he finally reacted. His expression changed drastically, and the Zhenqi in his body instantly became chaotic. He staggered and nearly slipped. With great difficulty, he managed to regain his balance and catch up with Li Qingshan, his head lowered. Li Qingshan was even more curious about who this Boss Gu was. Hua Sengzan just now said that someone wanted to see him, not old Wang wanted to see him. Could it be that he was talking about this Boss Gu? Outside Qingyang City, in a world of silver and white snow, a long mat had been laid out under a pine tree at the foot of the mountain before anyone knew it. There was a small table made of red sandalwood with a few extremely exquisite vessels for alcohol on it. A small cauldron was cooking on a small, red clay stove to the side. The two of them sat before one another, drinking and admiring the snow. They were so elegant and refined that they seemed otherworldly. One of them happened to be Wang Puxi, who wielded great authority in the Clear River Prefecture. He was actually in his 80s, but due to practicing qi, he only seemed to be in his 40s. His face that was renowned for its sternness currently radiated with a smile that felt like the spring breeze in March. The hawk had sent him a message, summoning him from the bustling Clear River city thousands of kilometers away to this remote, tiny city of Qingyang. Not only did he not feel angry, but he felt very honored instead. Old Wang, your cultivation has advanced again. Before long, the Clear River Prefecture won't be able to hold you anymore. Not just anyone could call Wang Puxi by his nickname. Even when Vice Commander Hua Sengzan called him Old Wang, he would glare at him. However, he felt even more honored when the person before him called him that. He leaned forward. I'm willing to serve, sir. I originally wanted Little Hua to take over your position, but Little Hua is far too useless. He's let down sir's expectations. Oh, they're here. Great Boss Gu, I've brought them to you. Hua Sengzan smiled before making his way over and grabbing the lid. Old Wang, Is the alcohol still not done? Wang Pushi knocked away Hua Sengzan's hand and shot him a glance. Don't call me that. Sit properly. The alcohol needs to be cooked for 45 minutes. Only then will it be flavorful. Hua Sengzan gasped and sat down to one side with his legs crossed as he clutched his hand. Old Wang, you've been too heavy-handed. He said to Boss Gu, you know how he usually bullies me, right? With his spirit eyes, Li Qingshan could see the two people under the guest pine tree from afar. If Hua Sengzan's spirit chi was like flowing water, then Wang Pushi's spirit chi was like frozen ice. It was so dense that it was almost tangible. Every movement of his would draw upon the spirit chi of heaven and earth. It was filled with indescribable profundities. But when Li Qingshan arrived under the guest pine tree, his attention was completely focused on Boss Gu. No matter how profound Wang Pushi's body was, he was unable to shift his gaze away. A pure white robe, wide and elegant, laid softly on the bamboo mat. It was as if it had blended into one with the vast expanse of whiteness. A face that could topple the world looked at Li Qingshan with a faint smile. It was as beautiful as snow, yet it contained a peerless beauty. Li Qingshan originally did not believe in love at first sight. He believed that he, who had experienced the assault of countless beauties on the internet in his previous life, would no longer have the so-called breathtaking feeling. But at this moment he was willing to believe in love at first sight. He believed even more that this world had a beauty that his previous life could not compare to. His heartbeat sped up, and he could barely control himself. He had once said arrogantly that he wanted to sleep with the most beautiful woman in the world when he was drunk. To him, this was merely a drunken joke. But now, a strong desire to marry her had sprouted in his heart. Feng Zhang's reaction was the complete opposite of his. He only took a glance before lowering his head, as if the person in front of him was not a peerless beauty, but a ferocious beast. Hua Sengzan glanced at Feng Zhang in disdain, then smiled at Li Qingshan. However, a hint of sorrow flashed through his eyes. Only the most arrogant and egotistical person would dare to look directly into her eyes, and then immerse himself in them, unable to extricate himself. Boss Gu coughed softly and sniffled. How many days has it been since you last bathed? Her voice was as pleasant as the flowing of an icy spring, but the words that came out of her mouth caused Li Qingshan to instantly become sluggish. A certain perfect image in his heart crumbled a little, and he really wanted to shout, "You can't say such things." In his heart, even if she could not be like those in fairy tales, where flowers would bloom and honey would flow as soon as she opened her mouth, she should still be more poetic and beautiful. Hua Sengzan could not help but burst into laughter. Li Qingshan did not know how to answer for a moment. Even though he had been training all day, there was no way he would have any smell on his body. But it was also thanks to this that he woke up from his just now state of intoxication. Li Qingshan just now noticed that there was a small silver eagle hanging from her waist. It was exactly the same as the one on Wang Pushi's waist. Under the illumination of the snow, the white eagle's wings could be vaguely seen. The wings extended all the way to the sleeves, and every feather was extremely fine, just like the legendary feather clothes. Chapter 79. Li Qingshan said, "My name is Li Qingshan. May I know your name, big sister?" He wanted to call her Miss, but although she was noble, she was definitely not the kind of young lady who had been raised in a boudoir. He wanted to call her Miss, but although she was young, she did not deserve this word, or rather, this word did not deserve to be used as a form of address for her. Fairy might be the best choice. Although he had no feelings for this word before, calling her this way felt like lowering his head. In the end, he could only call her big sister unabashedly, just like Su Xian who first met the white snake on the West Lake. Hua Sengzan really admired Li Qingshan. At that time, he could not even speak a complete sentence. This kid from the mountains was really brave. "My name is Gu Yenying. Do you know why I called you here, little brother Qingshan?" Gu Yenying gently waved the delicate jade folding fan in her hand. There was a hint of ridicule in her smile, but her gaze was very distant. "Little brother Qingshan?" Li Qingshan would rather be called Tiger Descending the Mountain by the people of Jianghu for the rest of his life, but he thought that he was only 15 or 16 years old. In her eyes, perhaps he really was a little brother. The sorrow in the depths of Wasangzan's eyes deepened. Wang Pushi frowned. How could Li Qingshan deserve to be called little brother by her? But he knew that she was carefree and casual, so he could not say anything. On second thought, if she did not have this kind of temperament, he would not be qualified to sit opposite to her. Li Qingshan thought about the only thing on him that people knew about and could take out was the spiritual ginseng. Have you come for the spiritual ginseng as well? If that was the case, he could only hand over the spiritual ginseng. It was not because he was enchanted by her beauty, but because he was not strong enough. Although he was in love with her, he was not a love-struck fool who would casually abandon his principles and dignity. If Gu Yenying was really here for the spiritual ginseng, then her image in his mind would be greatly reduced. Wang Pushi could not help but laugh, while Wasangzan was already laughing so hard that he fell over. Gu Yenying was annoyed and amused at the same time. She curled her lips and said, "Who would want something stained with your saliva?" In the eyes of the top experts of Jianghu, the spirit ginseng was as precious as their life, but in her eyes, it was just something stained with saliva. "The wine is ready." Li Qingshan calculated the time and placed the cauldron on the table. The moment the lid was opened, Li Qingshan saw thousands of rays of spiritual light shooting out and was reminded of a certain anime from his previous life. A dense wine fragrance spread out, and the surrounding snow quickly melted. The welcoming pine tree beside him clearly stretched out, becoming even more verdant. As Li Qingshan smelled the wine fragrance, he felt as if his muscles and bones had become lighter. The true qi in his body immediately became active. It was easy to imagine what would happen if he drank this wine. Compared to the simple spiritual wine brewed from the spiritual ginseng, this wine was more than 10 times better. Li Qingshan's face flushed red. He felt like an ignorant villager guarding a piece of cured pork and treating it as the world's most delicious delicacy. He was so ashamed that he could not show his face. He wished that she was really here for the spiritual ginseng. Gu Yenying sniffed lightly and smiled. 100-year-old Bodhi wine. Old Wang, you're very considerate. Wang Pushi said, "I know that you like to drink, Commander, so I forced some from old brother Tion. Among the 100 clans, the agricultural family is the best at brewing wine." He then personally poured the wine into the pot and glared at Wasangzan. "Aren't you going to pour the wine?" Wasangzan stood up and poured 2 cups of wine. Wang Pushi asked, "What about yours?" Only then did Wasangzan giggle and pour a cup for himself. Gu Yenying smiled and said, "Everyone who sees it has a share. Little brother Qingshan, you should try it too." She ignored Feng Zhang, who was at the side. Feng Zhang's ears perked up. As he smelled the wine fragrance, he felt as if hundreds of claws were scratching at his heart. If the spiritual ginseng was not that enticing to him, then this legendary Bodhi wine, just 1 cup. 1 cup. He could break through the 2nd layer of the qi refining realm and reach the 3rd layer, but no one mentioned it. He did not dare to blame Gu Yenying and the other 2. He could only grit his teeth in hatred towards Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan lowered his head and said nothing. Wasangzan had already forced a cup of wine into his hands. Come. Consider yourself lucky. I usually don't even get to drink something as good as this." Li Qingshan lowered his head and looked at the golden liquid in the cup. He knew that if he refused now, he would seem too petty. Thus, he raised his head and drank the wine in 1 gulp. "Hey!" Wasangzan wanted to stop him, but it was already too late. Wang Pushi had not even looked at Li Qingshan from beginning to end. He was only guessing why Gu Yenying had asked him to come over and even let him drink the precious Bodhi wine. Gu Yenying had no intention of stopping him at all. Instead, she smiled and looked like she was watching a good show. Before Li Qingshan could distinguish the taste of the wine, a scorching mass of spiritual energy split open in his stomach and rampaged through his limbs and bones. His own true qi could not stop it in the slightest. Not good. The spiritual energy contained in this wine was even greater than he had imagined. The spiritual light and wine smell it gave off were only the surface layer. Feng Zhang was delighted. "Country bumpkin." This Bodhi wine had to be drunk slowly. If it was drunk too quickly, the powerful spiritual energy would destroy the dantian and meridians, like a flood destroying a dam. Li Qingshan did not explode and die, because he had never cultivated any meridians or dantian. His entire body glowed brightly as he worked hard to mobilize his true qi to devour and convert the spiritual energy. His body was like a sponge, absorbing the spiritual energy and gradually calming down the chaotic spiritual energy. Gu Yenying stared at Li Qingshan, her eyes as sharp as a hawk's. On the tip of her left hand, an ancient copper coin was jumping rapidly. As she focused her gaze, Li Qingshan felt as if his soul was being seen through. A moment later, Li Qingshan had completely digested the spiritual energy in his body. Gu Yenying's gaze then became slack, and she tilted her head as if she was thinking about something. Hua Sengzan let out a sigh of relief. It seemed that body refining was not completely useless. Wang Puxi, on the other hand, felt a little strange. The spiritual energy contained in the Bodhi wine was so powerful that it was enough to allow one to directly advance to the third layer of qi refining. However, Li Qingshan did not show any signs of breaking through. He was still in the first layer of qi refining, although his true qi had become much stronger. If he had not drunk a cup, he would have suspected that this Bodhi wine was fake, or that it was not old enough. Li Qingshan let out a sigh of relief and cupped his hands towards Gu Yenying and the others. Thank you. He did not expect that not only would he not lose the spiritual ginseng, but he would also get a cup of wine to drink. However, he still felt a little unhappy. Chapter 80. Wang Puxi's expression was rather ugly. Xingyang was also under his jurisdiction, but how was he supposed to know what the Black Wind stronghold was? Hua Sengzan thought about it and said, I think there's a place like that on our list, but it's just too low on the list. We haven't been able to make a move in all these years. Only after a very long time did Li Qingshan learn that every single member of the Hawkwolf Guard had a list. They were ranked according to their strength, how much evil they had committed, how much influence they had, and how much they could benefit from it. The Hawkwolf Guard would send out masters to kill them one by one from top to bottom. This was the blacklist that terrified the people of the Jianghu. If you could rank high enough on the blacklist, it would prove you were powerful enough, but it also meant you were close to death. However, due to the endless number of people, the Black Wind stronghold was basically the type that would never be ranked. You've been too talkative. Wang Puxi barked. Feng Zhang saw how Li Qingshan had offended Commander Wang, so he thought his opportunity had arrived. He gathered his courage and said, Commanders, this kid stole the spiritual ginseng and slaughtered the innocent, ruining the prestige of our Hawkwolf Guard. Are you lying to me? Gu Yenying interrupted him. She was not questioning him, but surprised, as if Feng Zhang had done something unbelievable. No, I didn't. Feng Zhang wanted to quibble, but Wang Puxi looked over with a darkened face. He immediately felt like he had been grabbed by the neck, unable to utter a single word. Our Hawkwolf Guard might not be some kind people, but it's not like we've fallen to such a level. We've been ordered around by the people of the Jianghu and have to come up with these ridiculous lies. Gu Yenying shook her head and no longer paid any attention to Feng Zhang. Instead, she said to Wang Puxi, Old Wang, did you bring a map? Feng Zhang's face basically seemed like he had been struck by a knife. He was sheet white, without the slightest hint of blood. He was covered in sweat. After all, even people who had reached such a level of cultivation could control their bodies freely. His behavior only demonstrated just how distracted he was. I did. Wang Puxi fished out a large map from the pouch on his waist. Li Qingshan widened his eyes. A spatial pocket. A thick map made from the fur of who knew what animal was unfurled on the small table. It actually glowed with light. It was no regular map. Gu Yenying said, Channel your true qi into it and recite the 3 words Qingyang City. Li Qingshan placed his hand on the map and thought of Qingyang City. An extremely weak speck of light lit up in a corner of the map, and he obviously received a lot of information in his head, including the location, area, population, and so on of Qingyang City. Gu Yenying said, Think about the Clear River Prefecture. With a thought from Li Qingshan, 100 specks of light lit up at the same time. They were as resplendent as a river of stars. Every single speck of light was a city, and the light from Qingyang City was basically the weakest. The brightest speck of light in the center was Clear River City. 317 cities spanned 1,500 kilometers. This was the Clear River Prefecture. Li Qingshan had already known that this world was vast, but he never expected it to be so vast. He had once heard the elders in the village mention it, but he only treated it as an exaggerated story. He never thought it would actually be true. In a flash, he understood why the prefect had casually given the position of district magistrate to the incompetent Yi Dechuan. This was because a small city was completely insignificant to the entire Clear River Prefecture, and the Black Wind Stronghold was even more insignificant. Unless the Black Wind Stronghold directly rebelled, it would be very difficult for the news to reach Clear River City that was thousands of kilometers away. Not only was the imperial government of this world not weak, but it was terrifyingly powerful instead. Due to the sheer size of the land, they allowed the local officials to govern themselves like feudal lords. However, autonomy did not mean freedom. Whether it was the Black Wind Stronghold or the Drawn Rains village, no matter how much trouble they caused, they would only cause trouble in a small place. If they caused too much trouble, they could directly send 1 or 2 Hawkwolf guards over to crush them to death. It would not shake the foundation of the imperial government at all. It was basically more stable than any of the dynasties that Li Qingshan knew of. The Rui Commandery under my jurisdiction has 9 prefectures. Half a year ago, the White Lotus sect sacrificed an entire city in order to forge an arcane treasure in the Yueqing prefecture. There were around 200,000 people. Gu Yenying tilted her head back and drank a cup of alcohol. Hua Sengzan filled it up for her in a hurry. 200,000 people. To Li Qingshan, the Black Wind Stronghold's actions of massacring an entire village was already a heinous act, but he never thought there would be people who were 1,000 times more heinous. Li Qingshan subconsciously searched for the Rui Commandery on the map and saw almost 10 times the number of specks of light. However, from the map alone, the extinguishing of a speck of light seemed like a trivial matter. The Rui Commandery spanned tens of thousands of kilometers. Although Li Qingshan was not particularly familiar with geography, he did know that this was already much larger than the entire China of his past life. In that moment, Gu Yenying was clearly right in front of him, yet she also seemed to be beyond the clouds, so far away that he could not reach her. He was like a frog at the bottom of a well, seeing the posture of an eagle in the sky. All he could do was look up. The eagle circled in the sky in search of larger prey, so why would it cast its gaze on the well and pay attention to the conflict between a few flies? This time, it had only stopped by the well by chance and seen a special frog. Wang Pushi said carefully, "Commander, have you come this time for the matter of the White Lotus sect?" The White Lotus Mother was a golden core demonic cultivator, a terrifying figure that he could not afford to provoke. Getting involved in a conflict like that was definitely not a good thing. Commander Gu had led people to encircle and annihilate the White Lotus sect 5 times. Although they emerged victorious every time, just the White Wolf Guards had died, and his strength as a Scarlet Hawk commander was only on par with the White Wolf Guards. Gu Yenying smiled. Then how could I have come alone? The White Lotus Mother is injured and has already gone into hiding. I've only scratched the surface of the 6 trigrams divination, so I can't find her. Moreover, golden core cultivators aren't easy to kill. Reaching there, she glanced at Li Qingshan again and lamented over the fact that her 6 trigrams divination was truly lacking. She could not even divine this person clearly. Since it was not for the White Lotus sect, there really were not a lot of people in the Rui Commandery that were worthy of her taking action. Everyone looked over in confusion. Gu Yenying placed down the cup in her hand and paused. She seemed like she had a headache. Her Highness the Dark Queen's cat has gone missing. She sent me to look for it. Look for a cat? Li Qingshan was stunned. Originally, he thought she had something very important to do, coming to capture some terrifying figure. He never thought she would travel all the way to Qingyang City just to find a cat. Gu Yenying sighed. I'd rather fight the White Lotus Mother. However, Wang Puxi and Hua Sengzan knew what the Dark Queen meant, so they became extremely cautious. They were afraid to interrupt and ask too much. That was probably a conflict that touched on the upper echelons of the Green Province. It was not something they could interfere with. As Gu Yenying spoke, her mouth did not stop, downing cup after cup of alcohol. By the time she reached there, she had already finished the cauldron of alcohol. Her face was slightly flushed, like spring had returned. She was incomparably enchanting. Chapter 81. Wang Puxi glanced at the pouch of spiritual stones. Commander, this is far too valuable. His Bodhi brew was not even a tenth of the pouch's value. Gu Yenying had clearly called him over to give him these spiritual stones. He was unable to express his gratitude with words. If I tell you to keep it, then keep it. It's not like I lack these spiritual stones. As Gu Yenying said that, she said to Hua Sengzan, Little Hua, what you lack right now isn't spiritual stones. Don't just let others use the time they spend on bullying children on cultivation. You should stop fooling around and spend more time on cultivation. Out of the 18 commanders under me, only you're still a Qi practitioner. You have to understand that if you can't undergo the heavenly tribulation and establish a foundation, you'll still be mortal in the end. Li Qingshan thought, it's no wonder that Gu Yenying knew Feng Zhang was lying. She sat there, but she heard everything that happened in the city. And in the eyes of regular people, she truly was a godlike figure. Hua Sengzan giggled. Yes, Boss Gu. I'll definitely risk my life to cultivate. Only in the end did Gu Yenying say to Li Qingshan, Little bro Qingshan, I'll give you this map, and I'll give you a word of advice. The Green Province spans 15,000 kilometers, but the Jianghu is only a corner. With that, she took off, her wide sleeves ruffling in the wind like a hawk spreading its wings. Before Li Qingshan could even return to his senses, the figure in snow white had already vanished into the horizon. As it turned out, it really could fly. He repeated the words Gu Yenying had left behind. He understood that if he remained in Qingyang City, he probably would not have the opportunity to meet her again in this life. In the cold of winter, Feng Zhang was drenched in sweat, like he had just been fished out of water. He felt like he had just been freed from a great burden, so he sucked in a deep breath. Wang Puxi's expression regained its grimness, and he immediately exuded a powerful pressure. Li Qingshan suddenly realized that the person in front of him was also an extraordinary and terrifying person. Under the radiance of Gu Yenying, he seemed like an ordinary old man next door. However, as soon as Gu Yenying left, that terrifying aura that was like a mountain fire pressed down on him. Li Qingshan instinctively felt fear and danger, as if an axe was right in front of him, about to fall in the next moment. He gritted his teeth and clenched his fists. No matter how the aura pressured him, he did not move at all. Under the enormous pressure, his iron bones seemed to be clanking. Feng Zhang knelt on the ground with a thud. Wang Puxi turned his head away. He simply didn't want to take another look at Feng Zhang's ugly state. Compared to Li Qingshan, the difference was like heaven and earth. Leave behind the wolf tablet and piss off. If he were here and encountered something like this, he would punish Feng Zhang at most, but he really could not afford to lose face like this in front of Gu Yenying. He was truly furious inside. This bastard was actually bold enough to lie to her with words that did not know what was good for him. Gu Yenying did not say anything directly, nor did she seem angry at all. However, she had decided Feng Zhang's fate with just a few casual words. Commander! Feng Zhang wailed out like he had been struck by lightning. When Li Qingshan heard that, he also felt like a bird mourns when it was about to die. He thought, I'm just telling you to resign. Why do you sound like your parents have died? That's not how a man should act. Little did he know what this meant to Feng Zhang, nor did he understand the difficulty of joining the Hawkwolf Guard. The various cultivation methods that were difficult to come across in the Jianghu could be freely read in the library of the Hawkwolf Guard. No matter where he went, even people stronger than him would treat him politely. The entire clan was honored because of his identity. Once he was stripped of this identity, he would just be a so-called innate master in the Jianghu. However, Wang Puxi was renowned for his heart of stone. He would never go back on his word. If he persisted, he might even end up getting himself killed. Feng Zhang placed the wolf tablet on the table with trembling hands and glanced back at Li Qingshan. What kind of gaze was that? It was filled with resentment, as if he wanted to flay him alive and devour his bones. If regular people received a gaze like that, they would feel uneasy for several months. But who was Li Qingshan? He glared back fearlessly. After going through so much, his willpower had become unyielding a long time ago. It was no longer the same as before. In the end, Feng Zhang shifted his gaze first and left in a hurry. Wang Pushi said, "Put it away." Li Qingshan went up and stowed the map of the Green Province away. It was precious and precious. Although it could not be used for cultivation or killing enemies, it was the best tool for broadening the mind of a man. It allowed him to understand how vast the world was and how insignificant he was. However, no matter how insignificant he was, there would be a day when he would prove that a frog would not remain a frog forever. He would definitely leap out of this well, unfold his wings, and fly into the 9 heavens to pursue that unreachable figure. Not only did this experience fail to crush his confidence, but it instead strengthened his resolve and strengthened his heart, allowing him to set an even greater goal. Hua Sengzan smiled to one side. However, inside he only thought, the ignorant are fearless. There will be a day when you understand just how great the distance between you and her is. It's so great that no fortuitous encounters, talent, or hard work can make up for it. No matter how hard you chase after her, you won't be able to take a single step closer. Then there's this. Wang Pushi glanced at the wolf tablet. Li Qingshan was taken aback. He picked up the wolf tablet, and a cool sensation seeped into his palm. He felt refreshed all over. Not only was this item forged from profound ice iron, but it could calm the mind, preventing the wearer from suffering cultivation deviations so easily. It was twice the result with half the effort, and it came with many other wondrous effects. Li Qingshan did not know about this, but he knew this item was impressive. However, everything had happened so quickly that he had no idea how to react. In less than an hour, he had become a hawkwolf guard that the people of the Jianghu feared so much, and this was only because of Gu Yenying's attitude. Wang Pushi stowed the table, stove, and cauldron back into his pouch on his waist. He stood up. "You're not a hawkwolf guard right now. Go report to Zhijibua in Jiaping City." He took out a metal ruler and tossed it into the air. The ruler swelled in the wind and became 3 meters long, hovering in the air. Wang Pushi stepped onto the metal ruler. Hua Sengzan patted Li Qingshan's shoulder and gave him an expression of wishing him luck. He said 2 words, "Run." The metal ruler shot through the air, leaving behind a streak of light. "Oi, old Wang, wait for me." Hua Sengzan crossed several dozen meters in a single step. He stepped onto the metal ruler and vanished into the night sky in the blink of an eye. Before Li Qingshan could even marvel at the abilities of an immortal, he felt a violent wave of murderousness. He saw Feng Zhang's twisted face with a single glance, charging over like a mad dog. He decided to listen to Hua Sengzan for now and not clash with the maddened Feng Zhang. He used the movement technique of the tiger demon climbs the mountain and leapt up the mountain. As soon as he leapt away, a wind blade slid past where he was. The top half of the large, welcoming pine tree slid down slowly, falling to the ground loudly. When Li Qingshan turned around and saw this, he was surprised. This probably was not just because of Feng Zhang, but also because of the wind-entwining blade. The welfare of the Hawkwolf Guard really was impressive. It could not be compared to the inferior spiritual artifacts wielded by first-rate or second-rate people of the Jianghu. Chapter 82. Li Qingshan grabbed the cursive sword calligraphy on his back. After drinking the Bodhi brew, not only had the true qi in his body completely recovered, but it had also reached an unprecedented peak. It was enough to activate this spirit artifact again, and it would definitely be much more powerful than the wind-entwining blade. However, he didn't have absolute confidence that he could kill Feng Zhang in one blow. This spirit artifact of his was probably more than a grade higher than the wind-entwining blade. It was a truly precious treasure. If he didn't kill his enemy and word got out, it would probably attract not just first-rate experts, but innate experts or qi refinement experts. Moreover, he couldn't control this spirit artifact very well. Once he used it, he would have to use up all the true qi in his body. If he failed, his stamina, strength, and speed would all decrease by more than a level. He could only resign himself to death. Leaden clouds covered the sky again. In the pitch-black night, one chased and the other fled. With his extraordinary eyesight, Li Qingshan leaped continuously through the mountains, specifically looking for rugged areas that were difficult to traverse. He climbed cliffs and leaped over mountain streams, the scenery in front of him constantly flying past him. Feng Zhang chased madly from behind with bloodshot eyes. He also seemed to have night vision, but his eyesight was far inferior to Li Qingshan's, who had shed oxen tears. If they were on flat ground, Feng Zhang might have been able to catch up. However, in the mountains, Li Qingshan's 3 forms of the tiger demon movement technique practically had an additional effect. He was unbelievably fast, and the mountains rose and fell. After a few twists and turns, Li Qingshan could no longer be found. Li Qingshan pulled away and hid in a snowy nest in the shade of a mountain rock like a tiger hunting its prey. He held the cursive sword calligraphy in his hand and even summoned Little N. As long as Feng Zhang chased after him, he would go all out. Even if he couldn't kill him, he could at least injure him a little. They were already deep in the mountains, which gave him enough time to buffer. To be able to chase Feng Zhang to death all the way here, it couldn't be said that his calculations weren't deep. A long howl rang out, and Feng Zhang's venomous voice reverberated through the mountains. Li Qingshan, I will definitely skin you alive and hack you into 1,000 pieces. I won't rest until you're dead. The tremors caused the snow on the mountaintop to slide down. Li Qingshan knew that Feng Zhang would not chase after him for the time being. He sighed regretfully. As for those threats, he would not take them to heart. After lying in ambush for a while and confirming that Feng Zhang did not chase after him, he crawled out of the snow nest, shook off the snow on his body, and walked into the depths of the boundless mountains. After obtaining the map, he finally knew the name of the boundless mountains that he had been gazing at for 10 years. Boundless and boundless was boundless. Broad-mindedness was boundless. What a good name. He climbed to the peak and looked at the mountains again. There was no longer any confusion in his heart. He saw a house in the distance. When he rushed over to take a look, he realized that it was not a village, but a dilapidated mountain deity temple. Other than the main hall, most of the walls and houses had collapsed, but it was still a shelter. Although he did not fear the cold, being in a world of ice and snow consumed a lot of his physical strength and jinqi. With Little N's help, he found a bear's nest. The wild bear was still in hibernation and had not woken up yet. Li Qingshan went up and punched it to death, then carried it back to the mountain deity temple. Because of the different magical powers he practiced, although Little N's 5 senses were not as sharp as Li Qingshan's, he seemed to be extremely sensitive to qi. Even Li Qingshan did not notice the bear's nest under the snow at first. The main hall was empty. There was not even an offering table or a plaque. It must have been taken by the nearby villagers as firewood. However, Li Qingshan found that the mighty mountain deity with a green face and tusks was actually a solid wooden sculpture. It stood intact on the altar, with only traces of the erosion of time. Presumably, the villagers did not dare to blaspheme the mountain deity too much. However, Li Qingshan did not care about this. Right now, he was with demons. Both he and Xiaoan practiced the abilities of demons, so there was no need for them to worship ghosts or gods anymore. He went up and smashed the statue to pieces with a few punches and kicks, lighting a fire in the hall. Afterwards, he skinned a huge bear and dismantled its bones. He did not need any weapons at all. With a gentle swipe of his finger, the thick bear skin and flesh were cut open like paper. The bear heart was Little N's dinner. The bear skin was spread on the ground and the bear meat was placed on the bonfire. Speak of the devil. Oxen, whom Li Qingshan had been thinking about, suddenly appeared in front of Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan cursed silently. It was like the police in the movies, always appearing after everything was over. Oxen looked at the statue in the fire and nodded in satisfaction. He asked, "How do you feel today?" Li Qingshan said, "I feel like I don't know anything. I'm being laughed at for no reason. You don't even explain it to me. Even if I really cultivated the 9 oxen and 2 tigers, can I really defeat others? Then what's with the qi refining golden core? Oxen said, isn't what you understand now more profound than what I told you? You will soon understand whether my magical powers are useful or not. As for the qi refining golden core, that's how humans divide them. Li Qingshan said, am I not a human? Oxen smiled without saying anything, causing Li Qingshan to feel a wave of disgust. He grabbed the bear meat and began to chew on it. Many parts of the meat were still half-cooked and had traces of blood on them, but he didn't find it disgusting. Instead, he thought it had a unique flavor. In a short while, he had completely devoured the large bear. He also felt that he was a little inhuman, but there was nothing wrong with being able to eat and drink. After cooking, he exercised and got up to cultivate. He discovered that after drinking a cup of Bodhi brew, his tiger demon bone-forging fist was only a layer away from the first realm, but he just couldn't break through. He asked Oxen about the reason, and the result was just as he expected. Ox Demon's fist of great strength was steady and firm, requiring bitter cultivation, while Tiger Demon bone-forging fist needed to advance through slaughter. Slaughter? Li Qingshan lowered his head and pondered. In the pitch-black mountain range, a bit of light could travel very far. Li Qingshan lay on the bare skin, holding the cursive sword calligraphy in his hand. He had little and hide and quietly waited for his prey to take the bait. Hearing the sound of footsteps, he suddenly opened his eyes and stepped out of the mountain god temple. He saw that it wasn't just Feng Zhang. There were 5 people beside him. Hallmaster Wu, Wei Dandong, Chu Exin, Lu Tingrui, and Wan Hao, 5 first-rate experts. They had surrounded the mountain god temple to prevent Li Qingshan from escaping. There were also countless figures moving about. They were all disciples of their sections. There was no lack of second-rate experts among them, and the weakest were third-rate. Li Qingshan hadn't expected that waiting for Feng Zhang to take the bait would attract so many people. It seemed that although Feng Zhang was furious, he wasn't an idiot and knew to borrow the strength of others. Chapter 83. Wan Hao and Wei Dandong's complexion became somewhat uneasy. Chu Exin chuckled and said, there is nothing shameful about doing business. He fiddled with the iron abacus in his hand, making walala sounds. Lu Tingrui drew a glistening, thin sword. Hand over the spiritual ginseng, and we'll leave immediately. Feng Zhang had told them to come because he promised that everyone would get a share of the spiritual ginseng in Li Qingshan's possession. Although Hall Chief Wu was rather dissatisfied with this, he was not bold enough to say anything when he saw Feng Zhang's darkened face. Li Qingshan said nothing more. He fished out the spiritual ginseng from his gourd and tossed it into his mouth, chewing it up and swallowing it. He clapped his hands. It's gone. As soon as the eyes of the masters lit up, they dimmed rapidly. Their expressions varied, ranging from despair, fury, or disappointment, but none of them had the will to fight. Li Qingshan's drastic move was sure, accurate, and ruthless. Feng Zhang said, I have pills that are even more useful than the spiritual ginseng. As long as I take action, I'll definitely grant all of your wishes. However, if anyone doesn't take action, they'll be my mortal enemy from today onwards. I'll take revenge on all of your family members one by one. The masters all changed in expression. Li Qingshan sneered. Do you really believe the words of this person who threatens your family at every turn? Why don't we work together and kill him? Let's see if he has pills on him and we'll split it. He's no longer a Hawkwolf guard anyway, so we don't have to worry about revenge. The masters were all tempted. Feng Zhang drew his wind-entwining blade with a swish. Who dares to? Seeing how his forceful threats had the opposite effect, he added, the pills aren't on me either. If Li Qingshan were a little stronger, it really might have been possible for him to make them defect. However, the masters could clearly tell which of the two of them was easier to kill, so they made their decision. Seeing everyone approach him step by step, Li Qingshan thought, will the Wind Snow Mountain Divine Temple come after the Qinyang building is drenched in blood? Perhaps the heavens really were willing, but snowflakes really did drift down from the sky again. He did not plan on fleeing. Although the battle had been difficult, it was an opportunity for him to make a breakthrough in the tiger demon's fist of bone forging. Not only did he seek riches in the midst of danger, but he also had to seek magical powers and martial arts in the midst of danger. There were only experts who emerged from battle, not experts who escaped. Great by saber force. Feng Zhang raised his wind-entwining saber and attacked at the same time. Li Qingshan separated his legs and spread his arms. He faced the sky and let out a long roar. However, it was not the voice of a human, but the roar of a ferocious tiger. Roar! The entire spirit ginseng began to take effect in his stomach. True qi surged like the tide and poured into the whistle. He used a move from the tiger demon's fist of bone forging that he had never truly used before. Tiger demon roar. All the falling snowflakes within 300 feet were swept away. If one looked from above, they would see a hemispherical shape rising from the ground. Feng Zhang was the first to bear the brunt of the attack. His great by-saber aura was instantly disrupted. The 5 experts simultaneously stopped in their tracks and retreated. They felt as if an iron hammer was knocking on their heads. They looked at Li Qingshan in disbelief. They were intimidated by his ferocious aura. Was he really just a first-rate expert? The other second- and third-rate experts were even worse off. They covered their ears and rolled on the ground. 2 streams of blood flowed out of their mouths. Their eardrums had been directly shattered. A few of the weakest were even killed by the roar. The roar of a tiger in the forest caused the beasts to retreat. Li Qingshan was fighting 1 against 100, yet he still had the upper hand. The roar was endless, shaking the entire mountain deity temple. Not a single snowflake could fall. Feng Zhang endured the roar and roared, "What are you all waiting for?" He spun the saber in his hand and sent out another wind blade. Li Qingshan stopped roaring. He did not retreat or evade. He mobilized his true qi and poured it into his palm. His 5 fingers spat out a tiger claw-like aura and ruthlessly grabbed the wind blade. The wind blade shattered and set off a gust of wind. Li Qingshan looked at his palm and saw a faint blood stain. He stuck out his tongue and licked it. He revealed a ferocious smile and arched his body, looking very much like a ferocious tiger in human form. His killing intent burned wildly and his demonic nature surged. The killing moves of the 5 experts also arrived at the same time. Wei Dondong's long sword, Lu Tingrui's thin sword, Wanhao's steel saber, and Hall leader Wu's iron fists. Each of their weapons glowed with spiritual light. Even Hall leader Wu was wearing a spiritual glove. They sealed off all of Li Qingshan's paths of retreat. 18 abacus beads shot over like arrows, completely cutting off Li Qingshan's last chance of survival. Chu Xian also stopped smiling. The 5 experts worked together and killed him in one strike. Feng Zhang did not even need to make a move. Li Qingshan did not care about anything else. He took a step forward and grabbed Wei Dondong's shoulder, risking his life. Before the claw arrived, the roar pierced everyone's ears. Wei Dondong cherished his life so much, how could he be willing to die here? He immediately withdrew his sword and retreated. As soon as he retreated, Li Qingshan advanced, causing Wei Dondong to lose all his courage. The long sword in his hand danced in an airtight manner. He only hoped to delay for a moment so that the others could kill Li Qingshan. A spiritual sword pierced through the air. Little End, who had been hiding all this time, finally showed himself. Seeing that Li Qingshan was in deep danger, he immediately used his strongest sword aura, enveloping the 3 of them. Suddenly, a saber severed the sword aura. Feng Zhang waved his wind-entwining saber and blocked Little An's eyes burned with blood-red flames as he watched the saber and sword land on Li Qingshan's body. Blood splattered everywhere. In his heart, he wished that he could tear Feng Zhang to pieces. Wanhao's saber landed on Li Qingshan's shoulder and Lu Tingrui's thin sword stabbed into Li Qingshan's body. Although they were shocked by Little An's appearance, they were all first-rate experts. Their wills were incomparably firm and they were not affected in the slightest. Li Qingshan had long since circulated the true qi in his body. The 2 unstoppable spiritual weapons were not able to cut through Li Qingshan. But even if he had copper skin and iron bones, he was immediately injured. However, he did not care about it at all. He just kept moving forward, not letting go of Wei Dandong. The 18 iron abacus beads landed on Li Qingshan's body, but he was not affected in the slightest. This caused Chu Xian's eyes to widen in disbelief. Hall Master Wu was the most careful. He attacked from behind Li Qingshan. Seeing that Li Qingshan was wide open, he was delighted and punched Li Qingshan's back with all his strength. Li Qingshan thanked him in his heart. "You're the one I'm least afraid of here." He used the force to charge forward. His arms grew and he grabbed Wei Dandong's shoulders. He tore them apart and roared, "Demonic tiger tearing sheep." Wei Dandong did not even have the chance to use all his secret techniques before he was torn in half. Blood and organs splattered all over the ground. He was not afraid of a tiger-like opponent, but a pig-like teammate. Li Qingshan killed an expert while being surrounded by 5 experts. He was incomparably ferocious, causing everyone to tremble in fear. Li Qingshan grabbed the 2 pieces of the corpse and threw them at Wan Hao and Lu Tingrui. The 2 of them were afraid that they would be injured by Li Qingshan's final counterattack and follow in Wei Dandong's footsteps. They immediately retreated. When experts fought, martial arts were only one part. The more important thing was their aura. The moment the enemy's aura weakened, Li Qingshan's aura became like a river bursting its banks. It could not be controlled. He did not care about the people behind him at all. He charged forward like a mad tiger towards the 2nd and 3rd-rate experts. Chapter 84. The few first-rate experts' eyes almost popped out of their sockets. These disciples were all painstakingly nurtured by them, and many of them were their children. They rushed forward without a care for anything else. Li Qingshan was happily killing, but Wan Hao ruthlessly chopped down again. Li Qingshan grabbed a 3rd-rate expert in front of him and used him as a shield. "Puchi!" Wan Hao did not even frown. He chopped the person in front of him into 2 and continued to chop at Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan took advantage of the sword's momentum to use Tiger Demon leaping over the ravine and pounced at another 2nd-rate expert. A faint sword mark was left on his back as he thought, "This old man is so ruthless. Single-armed blade, why did you kill my disciple?" Lu Tingrui was not happy. She ignored Li Qingshan and stabbed at Wan Hao with her sword. The person he killed was her beloved disciple. He was very handsome and she had always liked him. Wan Hao waved his blade to block the thin sword. "He was caught, and there is no way he will live. I'm just giving him a quick death. Don't be noisy, woman. Now you are fighting amongst yourselves. Do you all want to die here?" Feng Zhang roared. His blade shone brightly, forcing Little An to retreat. "What kind of monster are you?" His right hand trembled slightly. Little An was not only skilled in sword techniques, but he was also very powerful. He was very hard to deal with. As Li Qingshan said that, his hand did not slow down at all. With a sharp swish, he reached towards the chest of a 2nd-rate master. His hand was covered in blood, and a brutal aura rose up involuntarily. Before his hand had even arrived, he had already frightened the 2nd-rate master, such that he could not even use half of his full strength. A few abacus beads shot over. Chu Xian attacked again, but this time he did not aim at Li Qingshan's major acupuncture points. Instead, he aimed at his eyes, perineum, and other vital points. Hall Chief Wu threw another punch towards Li Qingshan's back. The punch earlier had failed, so he was just like Lu Hong in the past. He was filled with disbelief, so he tried again without the slightest hesitation. Li Qingshan suddenly stopped, making the abacus beads miss him. He forcefully twisted his feet, and like a vicious tiger turning its head, he turned around and threw a punch through the air. "Are you done yet?" The fists collided. Leader Wu's arm cracked and flew more than 3 meters away. Before he could get up, a sword light descended from the sky, dazzling his eyes. It turned out that when Little An heard Li Qingshan's words, he immediately understood what he meant. He leaped and soared more than 10 meters into the air. He became one with his sword and stabbed at Leader Wu. Hall Leader Wu was greatly shocked. He displayed the quick reflexes of a first-rate expert. His fists danced wildly as he executed the move, thousands of men and horses. Every punch accurately struck the tip of the sword. A ding-dang sound rang out. Luckily, his glove was also a spirit tool, so his arms were not shattered by the sword. Little and borrowed the force to soar into the air. A wind blade slid past his body. Feng Zhang waved his wind blade and chased after him again. Little and did not bother with him anymore. Relying on his nimble body, he flew into the crowd and started killing those second- and third-rate experts. Leader Wu finally managed to escape. He lay on the ground and gasped for breath. His arms were in so much pain that they felt like they were going to split. Especially his right arm, which had collided with Li Qingshan's fist. It was as soft as mud. All the bones were broken, and his right arm was crippled. Li Qingshan wanted to give him a kick, but Feng Zhang was already in front of him. Wan Hao and Lu Tingrui temporarily stopped their fight and attacked from the left and right. In just a breath's time, Leader Wu took out a pill that flashed with spiritual light and swallowed it. He actually stood up again. Not only did the injuries on his arms recover, even his inner force was completely replenished. I have it too. Li Qingshan crushed the porcelain bottle in his chest and threw the body explosion pill that he took from Void Butcher into his mouth. Who cared about the side effects? He had to get through this first. Bang, 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 bang. His heartbeat suddenly sped up like an engine turning at high speeds. Li Qingshan's skinny body swelled up in a single moment, turning into a burly man. His true qi was stimulated tenfold, bursting out of his body. The long blade and thin sword were blocked by the protective true qi. It was as if they were stuck in a swamp. Wan Hao and Lu Tingrui were shocked. This was clearly innate true qi. He was not a first-rate expert, but an innate expert. Dabai blade force. Li Qingshan punched out. The true qi condensed into an iron fist and fiercely smashed onto the blade force. Li Qingshan already had monstrous strength. After taking the body explosion pill, he became even more powerful. He shattered the blade force with one punch. Feng Zhang flew high into the air and shouted anxiously in the air, "If you don't use your trump cards, everyone will die here today." Wan Hao, Lu Tingrui, Hall Leader Wu, and Chu Xian, the four first-rate experts, looked at each other. They all had trump cards to protect their lives, but the value of those things was comparable to a quarter of the spiritual ginseng. Unless it was absolutely necessary, no one would be willing to use them. Seeing Li Qingshan's terrifying appearance, they could no longer care about their treasures. Sigh, 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 we're going to make a loss today. Chu Xian sighed and took out a talisman. The other three people's actions were exactly the same. Li Qingshan's pupils constricted. He could not let them use their trump cards as they wished. Just as he lifted his foot, a terrifying gust of wind came from behind him. He suddenly looked back and saw that the second-rate expert, who was almost killed by him in one move, had taken out a talisman and stuck it on the blade in his hand. The blade was immediately enveloped in a layer of sharp blade force, and he slashed down. Li Qingshan felt that even if he had copper skin and iron bones, he would still be cut in half. Li Qingshan looked down on this second-rate expert too much because he did not have a spiritual weapon in his hand. Normal weapons could not break through his ox demon forges its hide at all. However, he did not think that he would have such a move. It was already too late for him to dodge. Seeing that he was about to make a contribution with one slash and take revenge for his fellow disciple, a look of ecstasy appeared on the face of that second-rate expert. Suddenly, a sword light slashed across his neck, and his head flew high into the air with blood. The corpse fell forward due to inertia, revealing the figure of Little and behind it. His white bones were already dyed red with blood. Behind him, dozens of second- and third-rate experts were lying dead on the ground. With a long sword in hand, his killing efficiency was much higher than Li Qingshan's. Many thanks. Li Qingshan smiled and took the large blade that had been strengthened by the talisman. The two of them stood back to back, facing all the enemies. The sky was as black as ink, and the night of slaughter continued. Taking advantage of this gap, the four first-rate experts bit the tip of their tongues and used the talismans in their hands. Cool breeze talisman. Lu Tingrui stuck the talisman on her leg, and a stream of air circled around her leg. Her movement technique was excellent to begin with, far surpassing that of Dragon's Gate sects Yang'anji. After using the cool breeze talisman, she floated to Li Qingshan's side like a ghost. It's your fortune to be able to die by so many precious talismans, and there's also the monster you brought with you. She stabbed out with her sword. Just as Little N was about to block it, she floated to the other side. Chapter 85. Metal Talisman of Sharpness. Wan Hao stuck the talisman to his blade and condensed it into a meter-long blade aura. With a swing, it was impossible for Li Qingshan to survive another strike from him. As for Hall Chief Wu, he stuck the talisman to his chest, and a golden figure similar to the master of the Black Wind stronghold, Xianxia, rose up from his body. It was also a guardian talisman, but its color was much brighter. He charged over and launched a series of heavy punches. Feng Zhang stopped right there and sheathed his wind-entwining blade. He looked at Li Qingshan like he was looking at a dead man. Let alone Li Qingshan, even he would be dead if he was caught in a pincer attack like this. It would be very difficult for Li Qingshan to deal with even a single one of them. He stomped down heavily, and the ground collapsed into a huge pit. The ox demon stamps its hooves shook up the surroundings, and the 4 first-rate masters all paused. However, he did not dare to use this opportunity to strike. Instead, he used his full strength and leapt into the air at the same time as Little N. Everyone raised their heads, and a variety of expressions appeared on their faces. If Li Qingshan had forcefully charged through, he might have had a chance at survival, but he had leapt into the air, which was equivalent to cutting off his path of survival. In the air, there was no room for him to dodge or borrow force. The moment he fell out of the air would be the moment of his death. Li Qingshan reached the highest point. Right when he was about to descend, he suddenly unfurled the cursive sword calligraphy. A stroke, a horizontal stroke, a vertical stroke, and a hook lit up on it. Long before the 3 of them had surrounded him, Li Qingshan had already gripped the cursive sword calligraphy and channeled all of his true qi into it. Ever since he obtained the cursive sword calligraphy, his true qi had constantly strengthened. Not only had he ingested the Bodhi brew today, but he had also ingested the entire spiritual ginseng. Just now, he had ingested a body eruption pill. His true qi had become unprecedentedly powerful, pushing the power of the spiritual artifact to an unprecedented limit. The moment the cursive sword calligraphy unfurled, Feng Zhang's eyes lit up. A mid-grade spiritual artifact. No, it's a high-grade spiritual artifact. Instead, he ravished with joy. If he could obtain a high-grade spiritual artifact, even being expelled from the Hawkwolf Guard would be worth it. Li Qingshan gathered all of his concentration and tried to control this high-grade spirit artifact. He didn't know if it was really his will that worked, or if it was just the spirit artifact itself that had automatically locked onto those hostile intents. A curl, a press, a horizontal, a vertical, and a hook flew toward Feng Zhang and the others. There was no need for Feng Zhang to remind them. At the moment Li Qingshan executed cursive sword calligraphy, these first-rate elites with sharp senses sensed an incredibly terrifying killing intent, and they reacted instinctively. Marriott waved his blade towards the sky, using offense as defense, and ingeniously sealed off the direction of the attack. However, in the face of absolute power, all moves were useless. Vertical fell straight down, and the blade along with the blade shattered inch by inch. In an instant, it pierced through the top of Marriott's head. He was stunned for a moment, and then his whole body crashed to the ground. Hall Chief Wu crossed his arms and used iron chains traversing the river. Combined with the protection of the Guardian King's talisman, he formed the strongest defense he could muster, but he was caught off guard by the hook. 2 first-rate masters who had used trump cards were instantly slain, demonstrating the terror of high-grade spiritual artifacts. Lu Tingrui relied on her impressive movement technique to fly away as quickly as she could. Chu Exen had been standing the furthest the entire time, and his reactions were the fastest as well. His rotund figure rolled to one side immediately. With a press and a horizontal slash, two streaks of blood appeared. The two of them cried out and collapsed on the ground, leaving behind an arm and a leg. They were heavily injured. The fiercest and brightest curl flew towards Feng Zhang. Feng Zhang sank into a horse stance and took out two talismans, sticking them on his blade and his body. The wind-entwining blade released a blade aura that was 5 feet long, and a golden bell condensed around him. If the Guardian King's talisman could be used to kill, then the golden bell talisman was completely for protection. As a second-layer Qi practitioner and a member of the Hawkwolf Guard, his wealth was even greater than those first-rate masters combined. However, he purposefully saved it up so that the first-rate masters would risk their lives. It would be best if all of them died and he would not have to give them the pills he promised. His thoughts were quite vicious. However, when he saw the high-grade spiritual artifact in Li Qingshan's hand, he immediately felt that it was no longer a pity. In that moment, there was a surge of light, dazzling everyone. Even the thick layer of snow in front of the mountain god temple was swept away. The blade shattered, the bell shattered, but he was still alive. The scene that Li Qingshan worried about the most happened. Only the hilt of the wind-entwining blade remained in Feng Zhang's hand, and his clothes were in tatters, covered in countless tiny wounds. However, he smiled complacently as he gazed at Li Qingshan in the air. Li Qingshan's heart completely sank. There was a sharp whistle behind him. Lu Tingrue's eyes were blood-red. He used his remaining hand to unleash a metallic storm. Li Qingshan pushed Little and aside and swung his blade to block with great difficulty. However, all of his true qi had been drained away. The side effects of the body eruption pill kicked in at the same time, making him feel like he was about to explode. Little and extended his hand in vain, watching helplessly as he was blown away by the metallic storm. In that moment, who knew how many hidden weapons he had been hit by? He smashed through the roof of the mountain god temple and landed on the bonfire. The mountain god's head rolled to one side. Its face was scorched with a hideous smile, as if it was laughing at Li Qingshan's overestimation of himself. As soon as Little and landed on the ground, he charged straight towards the mountain god temple. His slender sword stabbed out diagonally. Lu Tingrui stood on one foot and said resentfully, "I'll kill you, you monster." Feng Zhang did not pursue Li Qingshan. He took out another talisman and shot it into the temple. A ball of fire exploded in the temple. The mountain god temple, which was already on the verge of collapse, instantly collapsed. Flames soared into the sky and could be seen from 5 kilometers away. Feng Zhang felt that Li Qingshan had too many secrets. He was afraid that Li Qingshan still had a killing move, so he did not want to take the risk and used a talisman to finish him off. After all, it was impossible for a superior-grade spiritual weapon to be destroyed in this kind of fire. When the time came, he would just have to pick it up from Li Qingshan's ashes. The flames in Little An's eye sockets burned like blood. He attacked Lu Tingrui crazily, as if he wanted to perish together with Feng Zhang. Lu Tingrui dodged to the side and saw Little and charging towards the mountain god temple, wanting to snatch Li Qingshan out of the sea of fire. She could not help but mutter, "Monster!" Xianxia attacked again. The hidden weapons landed on Little An's body. He staggered and fell to the ground, but he immediately got up. Feng Zhang smiled coldly and waved his sleeve. His true qi surged and sent Little An flying. He stood in front of the fire like a mountain, separating him from Li Qingshan. He shouted, "You two idiots, hurry up and kill him. Don't let him escape." However, he was thinking of a way to silence him. He could not let anyone know about the superior-grade spiritual weapon. Chapter 86. But now, they were either dead or crippled. They no longer had the strength to fight against Feng Zhang, and they were also afraid that he would turn against them. Xiaoan did not flee. He knelt on the ground as cracks appeared all over his body. He stared at the sea of fire as 2 streaks of bloody tears rolled down his cheeks. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. However, everyone felt like he was crying. Feng Zhang turned around, his face full of a gloomy smile. "In the end, I still have to do it myself." His smile suddenly froze. A terrifying feeling came from behind him, as if a terrifying beast had awakened in the raging fire. A wild roar soared into the sky. That was not a sound a human could make. Feng Zhang turned around and saw a black shadow stand up from the flames, shaking off the flames on its body. It was 3 meters tall and had a pair of sharp horns that pierced the sky. 2 dots of red light suddenly lit up. Li Qingshan lay motionless in the raging fire. In this life and death crisis, just as he had expected, his demon tiger bone forging fist had finally broken through to the first level. There was no powerful surge of power as he had imagined. He felt that his body was undergoing an extremely strange change. Everything was being torn apart, changed, and reshaped. The flames gradually became less unbearably hot, but he still did not dare to open his eyes. Oxen's words rang in his ears again. Only by cultivating these 2 fist techniques to the first level can you be considered to have truly learned this remarkable ability. Although his eyes were tightly shut, through the layers of flames, he seemed to feel that the little skeleton rushing over had heard his cries. An indescribable feeling rose in his heart and turned into a wild roar. Li Qingshan stood up from the flames and suddenly opened his eyes. The burning red light was no longer hidden in the depths of his eyes, but revealed its sharpness. He stepped forward and crushed the mountain god's head with an iron hoof. Under the invisible pressure, the flames bloomed like lotus flowers. He walked out of the sea of fire step by step. All the surviving people on the peak held their breath and opened their eyes wide. His huge body was as majestic as an iron tower. His pitch-black skin seemed to be forged from black iron. Mysterious beast marks extended from his head to his limbs. His feet had turned into iron hooves, and his hands had turned into sharp claws. A pair of bull horns were so sharp that they seemed like they were going to tear through the sky. His fiery red hair, or rather his hair, was scattered wildly behind him, dancing wildly in the light and fire. Demonic chi soared into the sky, and the legend began. Feng Zhang reached into his bosom, and a gust of wind blew past him. The scarlet hair even brushed past his face. His body stiffened, his teeth chattered, and his body trembled. He no longer had any thoughts of resisting. There was only one thought left in his mind: run. A demon, even if it was a low-level demonic beast, was not something a second-layer chi practitioner like him could fend off. Apart from the wind-entwining blade from the Hawkwolf Guard, he did not possess a single decent spiritual artifact that could support him in battle against a demon. Li Qingshan's target was not Feng Zhang. When Lu Tingrui saw Li Qingshan emerge from the sea of fire, she turned around and fled without the slightest hesitation at all. The effects of the talisman were still present, so she actually moved extremely quickly. She leapt into the air, and a huge claw grabbed her head from behind. Li Qingshan said, "Tell me, who's the monster?" His voice was deep and hoarse, like the ringing of metal. It was filled with cold, killing intent. His fangs were white, and his eyes flickered with red light. Lu Tingrui opened her mouth, but all she produced was an unconscious gurgling sound. She could be regarded as a first-rate master who had run amok in the Jianghu, but she had never seen a true demon before. She felt like a mouse that had fallen into a cat's paw, like she had run into a natural predator. Endless fear weighed down on her. This feeling was even more terrifying than death. Clang, clang, clang. Countless hidden weapons landed on Li Qingshan, kicking up a series of sparks. Li Qingshan turned around and said, "Piss off." The sound waves infused with demon chi were like heavy hammers. Xian flew out 7 or 8 meters. His head tilted to one side, and he could not be more dead. A second-rate master lying on the ground suddenly leapt high into the air. He stuck a talisman on his sword and attached a layer of sword intent. It turned out that he had been pretending to be dead all this while. At this moment, he wanted to take the opportunity to launch a sneak attack from behind Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan was just about to turn around when a tiger's tail lashed out like a steel whip, almost splitting the second-rate master in half at the waist. Li Qingshan looked back at his tail in shock. He suddenly discovered that he had gained another function, and his body's reaction was even faster than his consciousness. Li Qingshan casually clenched his fist, and his head shattered like a watermelon. The next moment, his figure disappeared from the spot. One by one, he appeared beside the remaining second and third-rate disciples and began a massacre. In a few breaths' time, there was not a single person left alive on the mountain peak. Only Feng Zhang was left, fleeing down the mountain. Li Qingshan bent his knees slightly, and the ground suddenly cracked. He had already shot up into the sky. Feng Zhang was fleeing for his life when a black shadow descended from the sky, stomping on his body with the force of 1,000 caddies. Feng Zhang's cultivation could be considered impressive, but in front of Li Qingshan's absolute speed and strength, he actually did not have the slightest ability to resist. Blood spurted out of his mouth. "Monster, you are a monster." Feng Zhang's hands clawed at the ground. However, not to mention that he was no match for Li Qingshan's current strength. Even if Li Qingshan let go of his foot, his internal organs and spine would still be crushed. He could only survive by relying on his innate jinqi. Li Qingshan bent down and said in a low voice, "I will tear your limbs off one by one." His eyes were as red as blood. Filled with the hatred and anger of humans, he was 10 times more savage and brutal than ordinary demons. Little and tugged at Li Qingshan's hand. Li Qingshan madly slapped him. "Scram!" Seeing Little an idea flashed through his mind. Li Qingshan abruptly stopped his hand, and the strong wind he had stirred up almost blew Little an over. He looked at Li Qingshan in fear, not knowing what to do. "Little an, I'm sorry Li Qingshan grabbed his head, and between his fingers, a red light flickered. Little an stepped forward once more, grabbing Li Qingshan's hand, or rather, his claws. Li Qingshan forcefully suppressed all kinds of savage thoughts. He stomped Feng Zhang to death, giving him a quick death. He looked at his hands that had turned into beast claws, and all kinds of frenzied thoughts rampaged in his mind. He knelt on the ground, raised his head to the sky, and let out a wild howl. The sky was pitch black, and thick, dark clouds covered the stars and moon. However, above the clouds was a boundless sea of clouds. Under the moonlight, it was as tranquil as a fairyland. A white figure stood alone above the sea of clouds, his clothes fluttering in the wind. He looked like an otherworldly immortal. Gu Yenying lowered her head, and her black pupils contracted rapidly. They glowed with a golden light, as sharp as an eagle's. They pierced through the clouds and landed on Li Qingshan's body. Her intuition wasn't wrong. When she saw Li Qingshan under the guest pine, she smelled the aura on him. It wasn't because he hadn't bathed but because it was too weak, so she couldn't be sure. She made Li Qingshan drink a cup of Bodhi brew, which made Li Qingshan's true qi go out of control and increase dramatically. Only then did she confirm her guess. Chapter 87. When faced with demons, the first thing that regular cultivators would think of was to purge demons, and Gu Yenying definitely possessed the strength to do that. Although Li Qingshan's strength and speed had increased drastically after transforming into a demon, it was impossible for him to defeat a golden core master. But right now, there was no killing intent on her face. Her usual graceful smile had vanished as well. Instead, it was filled with a faint sense of pity. Under the moonlight, she seemed like a jade carving. Soon afterwards, she broke free from these emotions and exhaled gently before smiling freely. "Little brother Qingshan, from today onwards, you can only treat the mountains and forests as your home. We probably won't be able to meet again in this life, unless you become a demon general or even a demon commander. But by then, we'll probably be enemies. Have a safe journey." She murmured softly and even waved her hand, completely ignoring the fact that Li Qingshan could not hear or see her from the ground. With a wave of her sleeves, she flew off like a white eagle. Only after flying over 5 kilometers away did she carve out a deep trench in the sea of clouds with the fierce winds she kicked up. The white eagle landed on the edge of the well and saw what she wanted to see. A special frog had added an interesting experience to her life. However, no matter how interesting it was, a frog was still a frog. At most, it had become a little stronger. There were matters that were hundreds or even thousands of times more important than this that awaited her. If she could not find that damned cat, it was very likely for the 2 great sects of the Green Province, the Sword Collection Palace and the Umbral Een sect, to start a war. The backyard of the provincial lord's estate would be set ablaze as well. However, she failed to sense that as she observed Li Qingshan, an oxen was also watching her from the darkness on the ground. For a Jindan stage expert, this was simply inconceivable. Her spiritual sense was very sharp, and she also knew some divination techniques. However, if she could really divine the future, she would know that a frog would not remain a frog forever. Li Qingshan howled for a while before he barely managed to calm down. Little N did her best to comfort him from one side. He glanced at Little N. Only now did he truly understand what it felt like for Little N to turn into a skeleton. To a human, turning into something else was just too great of an impact. Oxen emerged from the darkness with a wide smile on her face. She looked at Li Qingshan and clicked her tongue in wonder, like an artist looking at a work of art that she was extremely satisfied with. Li Qingshan said, "You knew this would happen? This isn't some kind of ability from 9 oxen and 2 tigers." His current strength had definitely far surpassed the strength of an ox. In other words, the strength of an ox did not refer to the strength of an ox, but the strength of an ox demon and ox demon. Oxen said, "Looks like it's quite effective." Li Qingshan suddenly lunged towards the black ox and swung down with his right claw viciously. The claw was like a curved blade, shining in the darkness. The black ox did not dodge. His smile remained the same. Xiaoan lunged over from the side and knocked Li Qingshan away. Trembling, Li Qingshan grabbed the ground with both hands. "I'm sorry, Brother Ox, I don't know what's wrong with me." His heart was filled with anger. Any bit of anger and dissatisfaction would ignite it and lead to a massacre. Although Oxen might have tricked him, he was already aware of this. Just like in the legends, those who made a deal with the devil had to pay a price when they obtained power. Although it was cruel, it was fair and there shouldn't be any complaints. Moreover, the black ox had also proved that the remarkable ability it had taught him was indeed not an ordinary one. However, in terms of the effects of refining his body, this remarkable ability had truly reached an unbelievable level. In just a few months, his body had reached an unbelievable level of toughness. Oxen said, "Your temperament is not enough to control your demonic nature. However, I'm already very surprised that you can do this." "You're right. Although it is derived from the Daoist body tempering ability, it is no longer 9 oxen and 2 tigers. There is no ability that can turn a human into a demon. Now, what should I do? Is there any way for me to regain my human form?" Li Qingshan didn't want to spend the rest of his life in the deep mountains. "It's very simple. As long as you pass the first heaven's tribulation and become a demon general, which is the human foundation establishment realm, you can transform. How long will it take? If it's fast, 100 years. What?" Li Qingshan's eyes flashed red. "I can live for 100 years? Don't worry. After transforming, your lifespan will greatly increase." Li Qingshan gritted his teeth. Just as he was about to lose control of the murderous intent in his heart, Oxen said, "But it's not like there is no other way." Li Qingshan said, "What way?" Oxen said, "I'll teach you another ability." "Oh right, you are actually not a complete demon yet." Li Qingshan said, "And after cultivating this ability, I can become a complete demon?" Oxen smiled but didn't say anything. Li Qingshan knew that he could only walk this path to the end. The fire was still burning. Li Qingshan and Little N looked at each other and said, "All right, now that we are both not human, only you don't despise me." They really were connected by the same disease. "Big brother, don't laugh at second brother." Little N desperately nodded, expressing that he didn't despise Li Qingshan at all. Li Qingshan said, "Don't talk anymore. Hurry up and cultivate." He let Little N use the corpses on the mountain to cultivate and recover from his injuries. At the same time, Li Qingshan also searched the corpses. He found a bottle of spirit medicine on Hull Leader Wu's body. He raised his head and ate it. His injuries immediately recovered. He found a talisman on the sickly scholar Wei Dandong's body. The design was exactly the same as Lu Tingrue's. It should also be a cool breeze talisman that could increase one's speed. He also found a divine talisman like the one he used on Xianxian's body. It looked like he was indeed rich. Lu Tingrue's thin sword was still intact and glowed brightly. Little Anne's sword was very dim after the battle and couldn't be used anymore. It was a good replacement. Finally, he found a total of 4 talismans on Feng Zhang's body. They were all the kind that could be used to set fire. There was also a bottle of healing spirit medicine. Judging from its glow, it was much better than Hull Leader Wu's bottle. He carefully put it away. Li Qingshan threw all the corpses into the sea of fire. Seeing that the fire wasn't strong enough, he threw out a fire talisman without hesitation. The fire talisman floated in the air and fell to the ground. It couldn't be activated. Oxen said, "Demonic qi can't activate talismans and spirit tools unless you can refine them." Li Qingshan tried the cursive sword calligraphy again. As expected, it didn't react at all to the demonic qi he poured in. It refused to accept it. Needless to say, he didn't have the ability to refine it at the moment, so he could only put it away for now. At this time, Little Anne had healed all the wounds on his body. His bones regained their white color. However, they weren't pale white anymore. Instead, they glowed like jade. His divine art had improved by another level. Seeing that the fire was getting smaller, Little Anne suddenly opened his mouth and spewed out rolling blood-colored flames. The blood of the corpses was like oil that had been ignited. They soared into blood-colored flames that were several meters tall. They even overshadowed the orange flames and completely destroyed all traces of the corpses. Welcome to Immortal Cultivation Audiobooks, your gateway to the mystical world of Xianxia. Dive into legendary tales of martial arts, spiritual growth, and immortal ascension. Here, we bring you full-length English audiobooks of the best Wuxia and Xianxia stories, from young prodigies to ancient sect wars. Perfect for fans of Against the Gods, Martial World, and tales of demons and gods.